Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the sun-scorched sands of the Sahara, where you're about to become an ancient Mali trader trudging alongside a camel caravan in the 13th century. Picture it. The horizon shimmers like a fever dream, dunes stretching endlessly, and the air smells of dust and sweat-soaked leather. You're at Timbuktu's gates, the great mud brick city buzzing with merchants, scholars, and camels snorting like they've got a personal vendetta. Your robes cling to your skin, and honestly, you probably won't survive a week out here without some serious know-how. But don't worry, we're easing into this slow and steady, perfect for drifting off. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're chilling tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of Timbuktu, the Sahara sprawling before you like an ocean of sand. It's not just a city, it's the beating heart of the Mali Empire, a trade hub where gold, salt, and ideas flow like rivers. Historians call Timbuktu a cultural supernova, where manuscripts piled higher than your average medieval library. You squint at the city gates, carved with geometric patterns, as traders shout in a dozen languages, Mande, Berber, Arabic, haggling over goods you've never even heard of. The air's thick with the scent of spices and dried fish, and you're already wondering how anyone keeps their sandals clean in this dust bowl. Now, let's get real. This isn't a vacation. You're here to join a caravan, and it's a grueling gig. The Sahara's no joke. Temperatures hit 120 degrees by noon, and water's scarcer than a good Wi-Fi signal in the desert. Your job is to haul goods across this wasteland to places like Gao or Jenne, maybe even all the way to North Africa. Traders like you made Mali stupidly rich, like billionaires bathe in gold dust rich. Mansa Musa, Mali's most famous ruler, once crashed Egypt's economy just by flexing his wealth on a pilgrimage. That's the kind of clout you're brushing up against. But here's a quirky tidbit. Timbuktu's traders didn't just deal in gold or salt. They traded ostrich feathers too, which were basically the Gucci handbags of the medieval world. Nobles across Europe and the Middle East went nuts for them, sticking them in hats like some kind of flex. You're chuckling, right? Imagine risking your life crossing the Sahara just to deliver a bird's plumage to some fancy lord in Fez. Historians still argue whether these feathers were a status symbol or just a weird fashion fad, but either way, you're packing a few in your caravan's load. You take your first step outside the gates, sand crunching underfoot. Camels groan nearby, loaded with goods wrapped in coarse cloth. You're not alone. Hundreds of traders, guides, and hired muscle move like a small army. The desert's waiting, and it's not exactly rolling out the welcome mat. Your guide, a grizzled Berber with a squint like he's permanently judging you, points to the horizon. That's your path. No GPS, no roads, just vibes and a whole lot of sand. You're already sweating through your turban, wondering if you packed enough water. Spoiler, you didn't. The Mali Empire's trade system wasn't just about moving stuff, it was about trust. You're learning fast that every trader knows every other trader's cousin's uncle. Reputation is everything. Screw up a deal, and you're blacklisted from here to Morocco. You're handed a small clay token, etched with a symbol you don't recognize. It's a kind of desert business card, proof you're legit. Lose it, and you're as good as a bandit. You tuck it into your robe, hoping you don't drop it in the first dune. You're now knee-deep in the chaos of preparing your caravan, standing in Timbuktu's dusty outskirts, where camels are being loaded with enough gear to make your back ache just watching. The sun's climbing, and you're already regretting that extra layer of robes. Camels, the undisputed kings of the desert, are your lifeline out here, and you're about to learn why they're built like nature's perfect cargo trucks. Their humps sway as traders pile on sacks of salt, gold, and those fancy ostrich feathers you're still chuckling about. You're handed a rope to lead one, and it gives you a look like you owe it money. Good luck. Camels are the backbone of Mali's trade empire, carrying up to 500 pounds across the Sahara without breaking a sweat. Historians point out that these animals were domesticated by desert nomads long before Mali's rise, around 2000 BCE, making trans-Saharan trade possible. Without them, you'd be stuck hauling goods on foot, and let's be real, you'd collapse before lunch. A camel can go a week without water, sipping just enough to keep its hump plump while you're chugging your canteen dry. You're starting to respect this grumpy beast, even if it smells like a gym locker. Here's the quirky bit. Some traders swore by camel milk as a desert superfood. It's packed with nutrients, and you're offered a warm, frothy cup by a grinning herder. It tastes, let's say, like an acquired taste you haven't acquired. You force a smile, wondering if spitting it out would offend the entire caravan. Historians still argue whether camel milk was a staple for traders or just a backup when water ran low. But either way, you're not asking for seconds. You're learning the art of loading a camel, which is less glamorous than it sounds. Each animal gets carefully balanced with woven baskets called panniers stuffed with goods. You fumble with the knots, earning a snort from your camel. Rude. The trick is weight distribution. Too much on one side and your cargo's tipping into a dune. You're shown how to stack salt slabs, heavy as concrete, next to lighter bundles of cola nuts. The nuts are a hot commodity, chewed for a caffeine kick by traders who need to stay sharp. You pop one in your mouth and it's bitter enough to make you miss coffee. The caravan's leader, a wiry Mande trader with a beard like steel wool, barks orders in a language you're barely catching. He's teaching you the hierarchy. Camels carry the goods, but humans carry the trust. Every trader has a role. Guides, guards, even a guy whose entire job is to chant poems to keep morale up. You're assigned to help with the ropes, which feels like a demotion until you realize one loose knot could lose a fortune in gold dust. You're sweating, not just from the heat, but from the pressure. One trader whispers that a single camel's load could buy a village. No big deal. As you tie down the last basket, you notice the camel's eyelashes, long, almost glamorous, like they're ready for a desert photo shoot. You joke to yourself that they're better at flirting than you are. The herder overhears, laughs, and says those lashes keep sand out of their eyes during storms. Nature's sunglasses, basically. You're starting to see why these animals are worth their weight in, well, not gold. Gold's cheaper than a good camel out here. The caravan's almost ready to move. You glance back at Timbuktu's mud walls, already fading in the heat haze. Your camel tugs at the rope, eager to get going, or maybe just annoyed with you. Either way, you're about to step into the Sahara, where every decision could mean survival or a very sandy nap. You take a deep breath, tasting dust, and tighten your grip on the rope. You're finally moving, trudging through the Sahara's endless dunes with the caravan, your camel swaying like a ship in a storm. The night sky unfurls above, a glittering map of stars that's your only guide through this sea of sand. You're learning how ancient Mali traders navigated without a compass, relying on constellations and a knack for spotting subtle landmarks, a lone acacia tree, a weirdly shaped rock. It's like the desert's playing a game of hide-and-seek, and you're terrible at it. Your guide points to the sky, muttering about the camel's eye star, and you're just hoping you don't trip over a dune. Navigation was a cornerstone of Mali's trade dominance, with traders mastering routes that linked Timbuktu to distant cities like Sijilmassa. Historians note that by the 13th century, Mali's merchants had memorized paths across 1,000 miles of desert, a feat that made their empire a global trade powerhouse. You're in awe, because right now, you can barely tell one dune from another. The stars are your GPS, but they're not exactly user-friendly. You're told to watch for Orion's belt, which points toward key oases, but it feels like trying to read a map in hieroglyphs. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders claimed they could hear the desert's directions. They'd press their ears to the sand at night, swearing they could detect distant water sources by faint vibrations. You try it, feeling like an idiot as you faceplant into the dune. Nothing but silence and a mouthful of grit. Historians still argue whether this was a real skill or just desert folklore, but you're not convinced it's more than wishful thinking. Your guide teaches you to spot the North Star, low on the horizon, and align it with a notched stick for direction. It's low-tech, but effective, like using a flip phone in 2025. You're stumbling along, trying to keep up with the caravan's rhythm, each step sinking into sand that's somehow both burning and freezing. The camels don't care. They plod on, their hooves leaving prints that vanish in the wind. You're starting to envy their chill attitude, especially since your sandals are now basically sandpaper. The caravan moves in a loose line, maybe 50 camels strong, their bells jingling like a lullaby. You're told to watch for landmarks, like a half-buried boulder shaped like a sleeping dog. You squint at it, thinking it looks more like a lumpy potato, and your guide laughs, saying you'll get the hang of it. You're not so sure. The desert's disorienting, and you're already missing Timbuktu's chaos. Remember those ostrich feathers from the city gates? They're swaying on a camel ahead, catching starlight like some medieval bling. The night's getting colder, your breath visible in the air. You pull your robe tighter, wishing you'd packed a hoodie. The guide points out a constellation called the Trader's Path, a line of stars that supposedly mirrors the route to Gao. You nod, pretending you get it, but you're mostly just trying not to lose sight of the caravan. One wrong turn, and you're a desert ghost story. You joke to yourself that your epitaph would read, "Lost his camel, then his mind." The guide overhears, chuckles, and says, "You're not wrong." You're starting to feel the weight of the journey. Every step is a lesson in patience, every star a reminder of how small you are. The caravan's pace is relentless, but there's a strange calm in its rhythm, like a heartbeat you can't ignore. You're not just crossing the Sahara, you're walking a path carved by centuries of traders, each one betting their life on the stars above. You're deep in the Sahara now, the caravan's rhythm settling into your bones as you plod alongside your camel, its bells clinking softly. The dunes glow faintly under moonlight, and you're clutching a heavy slab of salt, learning why this stuff was worth more than gold in ancient Mali. Your hands are gritty from handling it, and you're wondering how something so basic could be such a big deal. Traders around you treat these slabs like sacred relics, wrapping them in cloth to protect them from the desert's relentless dust. You're starting to get why. Out here, salt's not just seasoning, it's survival. Salt was the lifeblood of Mali's trade empire, valued as highly as gold in the 13th century. Historians say a pound of salt could fetch enough to buy a horse in some markets, especially in gold-rich but salt-poor regions like West Africa. You're holding a slab mined from places like Tagaza, where workers toiled in brutal heat to hack it from the earth. It's heavy, like carrying a laptop made of rock, and you're already regretting volunteering to help stack it. Without salt, food spoils, bodies weaken, and trade collapses. Mali's wealth was built on this simple mineral. Here's the quirky bit. Some traders used salt as currency, breaking off chunks to pay for goods like a medieval debit card. You're handed a small piece to spend at the next oasis, and you can't help but laugh. It's like being paid in table seasoning. Historians still argue whether this salt as money system was widespread or just a niche practice among desert nomads. But you're eyeing your chunk, wondering if it'll buy you a better camel. You're learning the art of bartering as the caravan pauses to trade with a passing Berber group. They've got dried dates and goat hides, and you're trying to negotiate without looking like a total rookie. Your guide whispers tips. Nod slowly, act unimpressed, and never show how much you want those dates. You try, but your stomach growls, giving you away. The Berber trader smirks, and you end up trading half your salt chunk for a handful of fruit. Not your finest hour, but those dates taste like heaven. The caravan's pace slows as you approach a small watering hole, not quite an oasis, but close enough to make you sigh with relief. You're told to guard the salt slabs while others water the camels. It's boring work, and you're tempted to nap, but one glance at the trader's serious faces keeps you alert. Lose a slab, and you're out of the caravan faster than you can say sandstorm. You're starting to see why trust is everything out here. Remember that clay token from Timbuktu? You pat it in your robe, hoping it's still there. The salt's value hits you as you watch a trader break off a piece to season a meager meal of millet porridge. You're offered a spoonful, and it's bland despite the salt, but you're too hungry to care. You joke to yourself that this is the original low-sodium diet, and a nearby trader snickers, saying you'd better get used to it. Out here, every grain of salt is measured, every slab accounted for. You're starting to feel like a bank teller, except your vault is a grumpy camel. As the caravan prepares to move again, you hoist another salt slab, your arms screaming. The stars are still your guide, twinkling like they're laughing at your sore muscles. You're learning that trading isn't just about profit, it's about endurance, trust, and knowing when to haggle for an extra date. The desert stretches ahead, and you're wondering how many more slabs you can carry before you dream of a cushy desk job. You're swaying with the caravan now, the Sahara's dunes rolling past like waves, each step sinking into sand that's starting to feel like an old friend. The camel's bells jingle in a hypnotic rhythm, and you're finding your place in the caravan's daily grind, a slow, deliberate dance of survival. You're not just a trader anymore, you're part of a moving village, everyone with a job, packing, walking, watching the horizon for trouble. The sun's climbing, and your turban's doing a terrible job of keeping sweat out of your eyes. You're wondering if you'll ever get used to the heat, but the caravan's pace doesn't care about your complaints. The Mali Empire's caravans were like clockwork, crossing the Sahara with a precision that kept the empire's economy humming. Historians estimate these caravans, often hundreds of camels strong, moved goods worth millions in today's money, linking West Africa to North Africa and beyond. You're in the thick of it, learning the routine: wake at dawn, pack by sunrise, walk till dusk, then camp. It's grueling, but there's a strange calm in the repetition, like a lullaby you didn't expect to like. Your camel, who you've secretly named Grumpy, seems to agree, plodding along without a fuss. Here's the quirky tidbit. Traders sometimes tied bells to their camels not just for sound, but to ward off evil spirits. You notice the little bronze bells on Grumpy's harness, tinkling with every step, and you can't help but smirk. Imagine thinking a jingle could scare off a desert ghost. Historians still argue whether these bells were purely practical, for keeping track of camels in sandstorms, or if they carried spiritual weight for superstitious traders. You're leaning toward the ghost theory, mostly because it's more fun. You're assigned to help with the midday rest, unpacking blankets to shield the goods from the sun. The traders sprawl under makeshift awnings, sharing stories and flatbread that tastes like cardboard. You're handed a piece, and you joke to yourself, it's the original gluten-free diet. Nobody laughs, but you're too tired to care. The break's short, and soon you're back to walking, your sandals caked with sand. You're starting to notice the caravan's unspoken rules: don't waste water, don't lag behind, and never touch another trader's salt slabs. Remember those slabs from the last stop? They're still your responsibility, and you're paranoid about dropping one. The caravan's rhythm is relentless, but it's teaching you patience. You're learning to watch the camel's hooves, how they spread to grip the sand, and you try mimicking their steady pace. Your guide, the bearded Mande trader from Timbuktu, nods approvingly, but says you walk like a city boy. You fire back that at least you haven't fallen off a dune yet, and he laughs, his teeth flashing in the sunlight. It's a small win, but out here, you'll take it. The day stretches on, and you're starting to feel the weight of the journey, not just the salt slabs, but the endlessness of the desert. You glance at the horizon, hoping for an oasis, but it's just more sand. The traders around you don't seem fazed. They chat about markets in Gao like it's a corner store. You're picking up their lingo, words like souk for market and dioula for trader, and you're starting to feel less like a tourist. But let's be honest, Grumpy the camel still trusts you about as much as you trust your knot-tying skills. As the sun dips, the caravan slows, preparing to camp. You're exhausted, but there's a quiet pride in keeping up. The desert's teaching you its rhythm:
one step, one bell, one dune at a time. You're not just crossing the Sahara, you're becoming part of its pulse.
You're finally at an oasis, a speck of green in the Sahara's endless gold, where palms sway and a muddy pool reflects the midday sun. The caravan halts, and you collapse onto the sand, grateful for shade that doesn't come from a camel's shadow. Your robes are soaked with sweat, and Grumpy, your camel, is eyeing the water like it's a five-star resort. You're learning the unspoken rules of this desert haven. Water's shared, fights are forbidden, and every trader acts like they own the place. It's a brief pause, but it feels like salvation. Oases were critical to Mali's trade routes, serving as rest stops where caravans could resupply and swap gossip. Historians say places like this, often controlled by Berber tribes, were neutral zones where rival traders met without bloodshed. You're watching traders barter for dates and goat milk, their voices a low hum under the rustling palms. The water's murky, but you're too thirsty to care. You dip your hands in, splashing your face, and it's like a cold shower after a week in a sauna. Grumpy slurps nearby, and you swear he's judging your technique. Here's the quirky bit. Some oases had water keepers, old men who demand poems or riddles before letting you drink. You're approached by one, his face like weathered leather, who asks you to name 3 desert stars. You mumble something about Orion, and he laughs, waving you off. Historians still argue whether these keepers were guardians of tradition or just bored eccentrics, but you're just glad you didn't have to recite a sonnet for a sip. You're tasked with refilling the caravan's water skins, heavy leather bags that smell like wet dog. The process is slow, and you're trying not to spill a drop. Water's worth more than those salt slabs you're still hauling. A trader shows you how to filter it through cloth, catching grit and the occasional bug. You joke to yourself that this is the original bottled water, just without the fancy label. A nearby kid overhears, giggles, and tosses you a date as payment for the laugh. The oasis has its own rhythm. Traders sprawl under trees, mending robes or sharpening knives. You notice a woman trader, rare but not unheard of, negotiating fiercely for a bundle of cola nuts. She's got the same clay token you got back in Timbuktu, and you're starting to see how these tokens knit the caravan together, like a desert LinkedIn. You're tempted to ask her story, but the rules here are clear. Mind your business unless invited. You focus on your water skins, feeling the weight of every drop. The shade's a blessing, but the heat still creeps in, making your eyelids heavy. You're tempted to nap, but a sharp whistle from your guide snaps you awake. He's pointing to Grumpy, who's trying to eat a palm frond. Classic. You tug him away, muttering that he's got worse taste than you at an oasis buffet. The traders around you chuckle, and you're starting to feel like part of the crew, even if you're still the rookie. As the caravan prepares to leave, you take one last look at the oasis. It's a lifeline, a fleeting green dream in the desert's grind. You sling the water skins over Grumpy's back, their weight a reminder of what keeps you alive out here. The caravan's bells start jingling again, and you're back to the dunes, one step closer to wherever this journey's taking you. You're back on the move, the oasis a fading memory as the Sahara's dunes swallow your footsteps. The caravan's rhythm is your world now, and you're learning the trader's code, a web of trust and tradition that keeps this desert machine running. Your guide, the bearded Mande trader, is teaching you about griots, storytellers who double as dealmakers, their words as binding as any contract. You're clutching your clay token, that desert business card from Timbuktu, and starting to grasp how it ties you to this ancient system. The sun's relentless, and Grumpy the camel's still giving you side-eye, but you're too busy soaking in the griot's role to care. Griots were the glue of Mali's trade networks, memorizing histories and agreements that held caravans together. Historians say these oral historians could recite a family's lineage back centuries, sealing deals with a song or a story. You're watching one now, a wiry man with a voice like gravel, chanting a trader's ancestry to vouch for his trustworthiness. It's like a medieval credit check, and you're impressed. Your own memory barely covers last week's grocery list. The griot's words carry weight. One wrong note, and a trader's reputation could tank. Here's the quirky tidbit.
Griots sometimes used riddles to test new traders, like a desert pop quiz. Your guide nudges you toward the griot, who asks, "What walks the desert but leaves no mark?" You guess the wind, feeling clever, but he shakes his head. It's a shadow. You laugh, mostly at yourself, and he tosses you a kolimut for trying. Historians still argue whether these riddles were just for fun or a way to weed out untrustworthy outsiders, but you're just glad you didn't bomb it completely. You're handed a small ledger, not paper, but a strip of leather etched with symbols for goods traded: salt, gold, those ostrich feathers you're still chuckling about. The griot watches you fumble with it, his eyes twinkling like he knows you're out of your depth. You're learning to read the marks, which track who owes what. It's not just about goods, it's about honor. Screw up a deal, and the griot's next song might paint you as the desert's worst trader. You joke to yourself that it's like getting canceled on Medieval X, and a nearby trader snickers, saying you're not wrong. The caravan's pace is steady, but the griot's presence adds a new layer. He's not just a storyteller, he's a walking database, keeping the caravan's deals straight. You're told to memorize your own song, a list of your goods and debts. You try humming it under your breath. Salt, cola nuts, one grumpy camel, and promptly forget the order. The griot overhears, laughs, and says you'll get it by Gao. You're not so sure, but you're starting to respect this oral tradition that's outlasted empires. The day's heat is brutal, and you're sipping water sparingly, remembering the oasis's murky pool with longing. The griot's chanting now, a low drone that blends with the camel's bells, and it's weirdly soothing, like an ASMR track you didn't ask for. You're starting to see how the trader's code isn't just rules, it's a way of life, tying you to every trader who's crossed these dunes. Your clay token feels heavier now, a reminder that you're part of something bigger, even if Grumpy still thinks you're a rookie. As the sun dips, the caravan slows, and you're tasked with checking the leather ledger again. You're getting the hang of it, maybe, but you're still paranoid about losing that token. The griot's watching, his voice carrying over the dunes, and you're wondering what story he'll tell about you one day.
You're trudging through the Sahara, the caravan's bells a faint jingle as the wind picks up, stirring sand into your eyes. The dunes seem alive, shifting underfoot, and you're learning fast that the desert's not just hot, it's dangerous. Sandstorms loom like grumpy giants, and bandits are a whispered threat among the traders. You're clutching Grumpy the camel's rope, hoping he's tougher than he looks, while your guide scans the horizon with a squint that says trouble's never far. The air's thick with dust, and you're starting to wonder if you'll ever see Timbuktu again. Sandstorms were a brutal reality for Mali's traders, capable of burying entire caravans in hours. Historians note that 13th century caravans relied on experienced guides to predict storms, using signs like shifting winds or a reddish haze. You're watching your guide do just that, sniffing the air like a human weather app. He mutters about a storm brewing, and you're suddenly very aware of how exposed you are. No shelter, no GPS, just you, Grumpy, and a whole lot of sand. You're praying he's wrong, but the sky's turning an ominous yellow. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders carried storm charms, small pouches of herbs or bones, believing they'd appease the desert spirits. Your guide hands you one, a tiny leather sack that smells like dried weeds. You're skeptical, joking to yourself it's the medieval equivalent of a lucky rabbit's foot, but you tuck it into your robe anyway. Historians still argue whether these charms were genuine beliefs or just morale boosters, but you're not about to toss it into a dune. Bandits are the bigger worry. You're told they lurk near trade routes, ready to swipe salt slabs or gold dust. Your guide points to the hired guards, burly men with curved swords, who ride camels like they were born on them. You're assigned to stay close to the cargo, those precious salt slabs you've been hauling since Timbuktu. You're paranoid now, checking every shadow for movement. One trader whispers about a caravan that vanished last year, leaving only camel tracks. You laugh nervously, saying it's probably just a ghost story, but his grim nod shuts you up fast. The wind's howling now, and your guide orders the caravan to hunker down. You're helping tie cloths over the camels' faces, including Grumpy's, who snorts like you're insulting his dignity.
the sand stinging your skin, and you're wrapping your turban tighter, wishing you had goggles. The traders work fast, securing goods under blankets, and you're impressed by their calm, like they've done this 100 times. You're less calm, wondering if you'll be digging yourself out of a dune by morning. You're learning to read the desert's mood swings. Your guide points out a distant ridge, saying it's a good sign, no storms hit yet. You're not sure if he's reassuring you or himself, but you're grateful for the optimism. The griot from the last stop starts chanting, his voice cutting through the wind, and it's oddly grounding, like a lullaby in a hurricane. You joke to yourself that he's the caravan's Spotify, and a nearby trader chuckles, saying you're not far off. As the wind dies down, the caravan starts moving again, slower now, everyone on edge. You're gripping Grumpy's rope, scanning the dunes for bandits, and wondering how traders do this for years. The desert's dangers are real, but so is the caravan's resilience, and you're starting to feel that strength in your own tired steps.
You're plodding through the Sahara, the caravan's bells a steady hum as the dunes stretch endlessly before you. The air's heavy with heat, but you're distracted by the glint of gold dust in a trader's hands, carefully weighed in a tiny brass scale. This is Mali's real treasure, the stuff that made emperors like Mansa Musa legends. You're learning why gold was the empire's lifeblood, turning dusty markets into global powerhouses. Your robes are caked with sand, and Grumpy the camel's still giving you that look, but you're too busy marveling at the wealth in your hands to care. Gold was the Mali Empire's calling card, mined from rich deposits in places like Bambouk and Bouré. Historians say Mali supplied half the world's gold in the 13th century, making it the medieval equivalent of an economic superpower. You're holding a small leather pouch of gold dust, lighter than those salt slabs, but worth a fortune. It's not shiny nuggets like in the movies, just fine, glittery powder that sticks to your fingers. You're told to guard it like your life depends on it, because it probably does. One spill, and you're out a year's wages. Here's the quirky tidbit. Traders sometimes hid gold in hollowed-out cola nuts to fool bandits. You're shown one, split open to reveal a tiny compartment, and you can't help but grin. It's like a medieval smuggling hack. You're tempted to try it, but your guide's watching, and you're not that brave. Historians still argue whether this was a common trick or just a clever one-off, but you're imagining a bandit's face when he bites into a nut and finds gold instead of a snack. You're learning to weigh gold with the trader's scale, a delicate process that makes you feel like a chemist. The weights are tiny stones, each etched with symbols, and you're trying not to sneeze and blow the dust away. Your guide, the bearded Mande trader, shows you how to balance it just right, his hands steady as a surgeon's. You fumble, earning a sigh from Grumpy, who's probably judging your lack of finesse. You joke to yourself that you're the worst gold dealer since fool's gold was a thing, and a nearby trader chuckles, saying, "You'll learn." The caravan's moving slower now, the weight of gold making everyone cautious. You're told to watch for thieves, even within the caravan. Trust is earned, not given. Remember that clay token from Timbuktu? It's your pass to handle gold, and you're checking it still in your robe every 5 minutes. The griot's chanting in the distance, weaving a story about a trader who lost his gold and lived as a hermit. You're not sure if it's a warning or just entertainment, but it's got you paranoid. The gold's allure is undeniable. You're starting to see why Mali's rulers built mosques and universities with it, flexing their wealth to the world. You're handed another pouch to tie onto Grumpy's load, and it feels like holding a piece of history. You're sweating, not just from the heat, but from the responsibility. The desert's vast, but the gold in your hands makes you feel like you're carrying the empire's heartbeat. As the sun dips, the caravan picks up pace, aiming for the next market. You're still clutching the gold, your fingers dusted with its shimmer. You're starting to understand the trader's obsession, not just with wealth, but with the power it brings. Grumpy snorts, and you mutter that he's not getting a cut, earning a laugh from a passing trader.
You're swaying through the Sahara. The caravan's bells a familiar drone as you approach the bustling market of Janneh, its mud brick mosque looming like a giant sandcastle. The air hums with voices, smells of roasted meat, and the chatter of haggling traders. You're diving into the chaos, clutching your clay token and a pouch of gold dust, ready to barter like a pro, or at least fake it. Grumpy the camel's behind you, loaded with salt slabs and those ostrich feathers, and you're hoping he doesn't cause a scene in the crowded souk. The desert's behind you, but this market's a whole new kind of wild. Janneh was a trade hub of the Mali Empire, rivaling Timbuktu for its vibrant markets and scholarly vibe. Historians say its great mosque, rebuilt in the 13th century, was a beacon for traders and pilgrims, drawing crowds from across West Africa. You're weaving through stalls packed with kola nuts, cloth, and pottery, the noise hitting you like a wave. Your job is to trade some of your salt and gold for supplies, dates, millet, maybe a new water skin. But haggling's an art, and you're more of a finger painter than a master. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders seal deals with a ceremonial sip of palm wine, believing it blessed the transaction. You're offered a clay cup, the wine sweet but suspiciously warm, and you sip it while trying not to grimace. It's like drinking dessert left out in the sun. Historians still argue whether this was a sacred ritual or just an excuse to drink, but you're just hoping it doesn't knock you out before you make a deal. You're at a stall now, facing a trader with a grin sharper than his dagger. He wants your salt slab for a stack of dried fish, but you're holding out for more. Your guide's advice echoes: act unimpressed, nod slowly, and you try, but your eyes keep darting to the fish like a hungry puppy. You toss in a pinch of gold dust, and the trader's grin widens. You're not sure if you won or got played, but you walk away with fish and a smug feeling. You joke to yourself it's like winning a bidding war on eBay, and a passing kid giggles, tossing you a kola nut for the vibe. The market's a sensory overload. Colors, shouts, the clink of cowrie shells used as coins. You're learning to spot good deals, like cloth dyed with indigo so deep it looks like the night sky. The griot from the Caravans here too, singing a trader's praises to boost his sales. You're starting to see how his voice shapes the market's flow, like a medieval influencer. Remember those salt slabs? They're a hot commodity here, and you're guarding them like a bank vault, especially after that bandit scare in the dunes. You're getting the hang of haggling, but it's exhausting. Every deal feels like a chess match, and you're barely a pawn. A woman trader, the same one from the oasis, brushes past, her arms full of beads. You're curious about her story, but too shy to ask. Instead, you focus on tying your new goods to Grumpy, who snorts like he's critiquing your knots. You mutter that he's not the boss of you, and a nearby trader laughs, saying camels always win. As the market winds down, you're loaded with supplies and a little wiser. Janneh's chaos is thrilling, but you're ready for the desert's quiet again. The caravan's packing up, and you're wondering what stories the griot will tell about your bargaining skills, or lack thereof.
You're back in the Sahara's embrace, the market's chaos a distant hum as the caravan plods through dunes under a scorching sun. You're walking beside Grumpy, who's loaded with new supplies from Janneh, and you're starting to notice the camel herders, quiet, wiry men who seem to speak camel better than human. They're teaching you their tricks, how they coax these stubborn beasts to carry Mali's wealth across the desert. Your hands are sore from ropes, and Grumpy's still giving you that look, but you're beginning to see why these animals are the real MVPs of the caravan. Camels were the engine of Mali's trade empire, bred and trained by nomadic herders who knew their quirks like family. Historians say Berber and Tuareg herders could raise camels to survive weeks without water, making them perfect for the Sahara's brutal routes. You're watching a herder, his face creased like old leather, murmur to a young camel, calming it with a low hum. It's like watching a horse whisperer, except with more spitting. You're handed a rope to try leading Grumpy properly, and you're pretty sure he's plotting revenge for your bad knots. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some herders named their camels after stars, believing it gave them luck on night treks. Your guide points to Grumpy, saying his real name is Sirius, after the brightest star.
You laugh, joking that Grumpy suits him better, and the herder grins, saying you'll learn to love him. Historians still argue whether these star names were practical markers or tied to desert mysticism, but you're starting to think Grumpy's got a celestial ego. You're learning the herder's tricks, how to check a camel's hump for fat reserves, soft but firm, like a well-packed pillow. Too soft, and your camel's running on empty. You give Grumpy's hump a tentative pat, and he snorts, clearly unimpressed. The herder shows you how to adjust his load, balancing salt slabs and Janae's dried fish so he doesn't tip. It's like solving a puzzle, and you're terrible at it, but you're getting the hang of shifting weight without earning a camel kick. The herders are a tight-knit crew, sharing a dialect you barely catch. They teach you to spot a camel's mood by its ears. Forward means happy, back means trouble. Grumpy's ears are permanently back, and you mutter he's got the personality of a rainy Monday. A herder overhears, chuckles, and says you'll be friends by Gao. You're skeptical, but nod, remembering the trader's code from the griots lessons. Trust is everything, even with camels. The caravan's pace is steady, and you're noticing how the herders keep it together, guiding camels through narrow dune paths like they're threading a needle. You're starting to respect their skill, especially after you trip and faceplant into sand. They don't laugh, just haul you up, and you're grateful for the silent camaraderie. Those gold pouches from Janae are still on your mind, tucked safely in Grumpy's load, and you're paranoid about bandits after that scare a few days back. As the sun climbs, you're practicing the herder's hum, a low drone that calms Grumpy slightly. You're starting to feel the desert's rhythm, not just in your steps, but in the way the herders and camels move as one. It's a partnership older than the Mali Empire, and you're a small part of it, even if Grumpy disagrees. The dunes stretch on, but you're learning to trust the herders, the camels, and maybe even yourself.
You're camped under a vast Sahara sky, the caravan's bells silent as the desert's chill seeps into your bones. The stars burn bright, and you're huddled by a small fire, the crackle of acacia wood blending with eerie tales whispered by traders. Your robes are wrapped tight, and Grumpy's tethered nearby, his hump casting a lumpy shadow. You're learning the desert's nighttime rhythm, cold, quiet, and full of stories that make you glance over your shoulder. The herders are checking camels, but you're too busy listening to a griot spin tales that feel like they're conjured from the dunes themselves. Night camps were vital for Mali's traders, a chance to rest and share knowledge that kept the caravan alive. Historians say these stops were where traders swapped not just goods, but legends, binding the empire's culture across vast distances. You're sitting cross-legged, the fire's warmth barely keeping the cold at bay, as the griot describes a spirit called a jinni that haunts lost caravans. His voice is low, hypnotic, perfect for this sleepy journey, but it's giving you chills, and not just from the temperature. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders left offerings of cola nuts at camp edges to appease desert spirits. You're handed one to toss into the dark, and you can't help but laugh. It's like leaving cookies for a sandy Santa. You chuck it, half expecting a ghost to say, "Thanks." Historians still argue whether these offerings were serious rituals or just a way to calm jittery traders, but you're starting to see why the desert's eerie vibe makes people superstitious. The griot's tale shifts to a trader who outsmarted a jinni by singing its name backward. Good luck with that pronunciation. You joke to yourself that you'd probably butcher it and summon a sandstorm instead. A nearby trader snickers, passing you a cup of lukewarm tea that tastes like boiled twigs. It's awful, but you sip it, grateful for the warmth. The fire's glow lights up faces, and you're noticing the camaraderie. Traders, herders, even the griot, all bound by the desert's code. You're tasked with checking Grumpy's tether, and you stumble through the sand, the cold biting your fingers. His ears are back, as usual, but he's calm, chewing cud like he's meditating. You're starting to think he's got the right idea. Less worrying, more chewing. The herders taught you to check his hooves for stones, and you're paranoid about missing one after that hump-patting fiasco.
Remember those gold pouches from Jene? They're safe in his load, but you're still checking them like a nervous bank teller. The griot's voice weaves on, now about a lost oasis that appears only to honest traders. You're half asleep, wondering if it's the one you stopped at days ago, with its murky water and palm shade. The desert's full of these stories, each one blurring the line between fact and dream. You're learning to listen, not just for entertainment, but for clues. Some tales hide tips about routes or storms. The griot's your Spotify and survival guide in one. As the fire dies, the camp settles, blankets rustling as traders drift off. You're curled up near Grumpy, his warmth a small comfort against the cold. The stars feel close, like they're watching you back. You're starting to love these quiet nights, even if the desert's tales make you pull your robe a little tighter.
You're back on the move, the Sahara's dunes stretching like an endless canvas as the caravan's bells jingle softly. The sun's climbing, and you're learning how Mali's traders memorized routes without maps, relying on memory, stars, and a knack for spotting the desert's subtle cues. Your guide, the bearded Mande trader, points to a gnarled tree stump, calling it a desert signpost. You're squinting, thinking it looks like driftwood, and wondering how anyone trusts a stick to guide them across this wasteland. Grumpy the camel snorts, probably agreeing with your skepticism. Mali's traders were navigational geniuses, memorizing routes that crisscrossed the Sahara for centuries. Historians say they used oral traditions, passed down by griots, to recall landmarks like rocks, dunes, or even the angle of a shadow. You're trying to keep up, repeating the stump's location in your head like a mantra: 3 dunes east, 1 north. It's like memorizing a song, except if you forget the lyrics, you're lost forever. Your guide's patient, but you're pretty sure he thinks you're hopeless after that riddle flop at the oasis. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders claimed they could smell water in the desert, a faint dampness in the air. Your guide makes you try, sniffing like a bloodhound, and you just get a nose full of sand. You laugh, joking it's the worst cologne ever, and a herder nearby chuckles, saying you'll smell it by Gao. Historians still argue whether this was a real skill or just heightened intuition from years in the desert, but you're sticking to stars for now. You're learning to spot other signposts, a cluster of stones, a dune shaped like a crescent moon. Your guide points them out, his voice calm but firm, like he's teaching a kid to ride a bike. You're starting to see the desert differently, not as a blur of sand, but a map of clues. Remember those starlit paths from the night trek? You're connecting the dots, aligning the Camel's Eye star with a rock formation. It's slow going, and you're paranoid about forgetting a landmark, especially with Grumpy's load of gold and salt depending on you. The caravan's pace is relentless, and you're sweating through your robes, your sandals more sand than leather now. You're repeating the route in your head, trying to mimic the griot's rhythmic chants from the campfire. It's helping, sort of, but you're still double-checking with your guide every 10 steps. He grins, saying you're better than most city boys, which feels like a win until Grumpy trips you with his rope. You mutter he's the real navigator, and a trader overhears, laughing that camels never forget a path. The desert's teaching you patience, each landmark a small victory. You're starting to feel the trader's confidence, the kind that comes from knowing a dune's curve or a star's tilt. It's not just about survival, it's about mastering a world that doesn't care if you make it. You're clutching that clay token from Timbuktu, a reminder of the trust you're earning. The griot's voice echoes in your mind, weaving routes into stories, and you're starting to think you might just remember that stump after all. As the sun peaks, the caravan slows, and you're scanning for the next signpost, a twisted acacia supposedly. You're not lost yet, but the desert's vastness keeps you humble. Grumpy plods on, and you're hoping his star-named ego knows the way better than you do. You're deep in the Sahara's heart. The caravan's bells a faint chime as you trudge through dunes that seem to shift just to mess with you. The Mali Empire's wealth is all around you, not just in the gold dust or salt slabs on Grumpy's back, but in the way this trade route ties the world together. You're starting to see how these desert tracks made Mali a global player, its goods and ideas reaching as far as Europe and the Middle East.
Your robes are heavy with dust, and Grumpy's still throwing shade with every snort, but you're too busy marveling at the Empire's reach to care. Mali's trade routes were the arteries of its power, linking West Africa to North African ports and beyond in the 13th century. Historians say Mali's gold fueled economies as far away as Cairo and Venice, making it a medieval superpower. You're carrying a pouch of that gold dust, its weight a constant reminder of the empire's clout. Every step you take is part of a network that carried not just goods, but culture. Manuscripts, music, even those ostrich feathers you're still chuckling about. It's like Mali was the Amazon Prime of its day, delivering wealth and ideas across continents. Here's the quirky tidbit. Traders sometimes marked their goods with secret symbols to track them across markets. You're shown one on a salt slab, a tiny carved spiral that looks like a doodle. You joke it's the medieval equivalent of a barcode, and a nearby trader grins, saying it's close enough. Historians still argue whether these symbols are for ownership or some kind of desert copyright, but you're just glad you didn't have to carve it yourself. You're learning how Mali's wealth shaped its influence. Your guide points to a distant caravan heading north, likely bound for Sigil Massa, where Mali's gold will buy spices or silk. You're picturing the ripple effect, your salt slabs feeding a village, your gold dust buying a scholar's ink in Timbuktu. The griot's chants from the campfire echo in your head, weaving stories of Mansa Musa's pilgrimage when he gave away so much gold it tanked markets. You're starting to see why every trader here walks with a quiet pride, like they're carrying the empire's legacy. The caravan's pace is steady, and you're keeping an eye on Grumpy's load, those gold pouches and salt slabs still your responsibility. You're paranoid after that bandit scare, checking your clay token like it's a winning lottery ticket. The desert's vast, but the trade network makes it feel smaller, connecting you to cities you'll never see. You're trying to memorize the route's landmarks, a crooked rock, a dune's curve, repeating them like that griot song. You mutter to Grumpy that you're basically a GPS now, and he snorts, clearly unimpressed. The sun's dipping, painting the dunes gold, and you're feeling the weight of Mali's legacy. Every trader, every camel, every grain of dust is part of something bigger. You're not just crossing the Sahara, you're walking a path that shaped history. Your guide nods at you, like he knows you're getting it. You're starting to feel like a real trader, even if Grumpy still thinks you're a rookie. You're nearing the end of your journey, the Sahara's dunes softening into the horizon as the caravan approaches Gao, a trade hub shimmering in the distance. The bells on Grumpy's harness jingle faintly, and you're reflecting on the legacy of Mali's traders, their paths weaving a tapestry of wealth and culture that outlasted empires. Your robes are caked with sand, your hands sore from ropes, but there's a quiet pride in your steps. You've carried gold, haggled in Janae, and survived the desert's whims. Now, as the sun dips low, you're ready to let this journey fade into a soothing close. Mali's trade routes didn't just move goods, they shaped history, linking West Africa to the world and leaving a legacy of mosques, manuscripts, and markets. Historians say the empire's influence lingered long after its peak, with Timbuktu's libraries preserving knowledge that inspired scholars for centuries. You're standing at Gao's edge, watching traders unload salt slabs and gold dust, the same goods you've hauled since Timbuktu. It's humbling, knowing your steps followed paths trod by countless others, each one building Mali's legend. You're part of that now, even if Grumpy still snorts at your knot-tying skills. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders left small stones at journey's end as a thank you to the desert. You're handed one, smooth and warm from the sun, and you toss it into the sand, feeling a bit silly but oddly grateful. It's like signing a guest book for the Sahara. Historians still argue whether this was a spiritual act or just a way to mark a safe arrival, but you're happy to leave a tiny piece of your journey behind. You're unloading Grumpy's cargo, the salt slabs and gold pouches finally off your hands. The market's buzz is familiar now, like Janae's, but softer, as traders settle accounts under Gao's palm trees. You're remembering the griot's stories, the herder's hums, the oasis's shade. Each moment a thread in the caravan's story. You joke to yourself that you're basically a desert influencer now, and a passing trader chuckles, saying you've earned it. Your clay token, that Timbuktu keepsake, feels like a medal in your robe. The desert's taught you resilience, trust, and the art of moving slow. You're watching the sun sink, painting the dunes in hues of amber and rose, and it's like the Sahara saying goodbye. The caravan's disbanding, traders heading to homes or new routes, but you're lingering, soaking in the quiet. Gao's walls glow in the twilight, and you're wondering what stories the griot will tell about you, probably something about your terrible haggling. Wind down. Now let's ease you into rest. Picture the Sahara's vastness fading, the dunes blurring into a soft golden haze. The caravan's bells grow distant, a gentle chime lulling you deeper into calm. You're lying under that starlit sky, the one that guided you from Timbuktu. Its constellations winking like old friends. The desert's warmth lingers in your bones, but the night's cool breath wraps you in peace. Every step you took, every salt slab you carried, every griot's tale, it's all melting away, leaving only the rhythm of your breath. The Sahara's still out there, whispering its stories, but you're drifting now, carried by the quiet hum of a journey well-traveled. Let the stars fade, let the sand settle, and sink into a dream as vast and soft as the desert itself. Sleep well.